Hello, I'm your host, Karl Meneghella, welcoming you to Season 2 of Coffee with Karl. This season, I'm really excited that we continue with our idea of having visiting experts, both locally and internationally, as they share their wisdom, knowledge, and experience on ideas both big and small. A new initiative this season will be our casual coffee conversations. These will be impromptu, unscripted conversations where we pull at an idea and see where it leads us. Another exciting aspect that I'm really looking forward to is our town hall style forums, a chance for our visiting experts to engage with students and together unpack some more contemporary issues, a way of engaging and broadening our reach and giving more people a voice. So I'm very excited about Season 2 and I look forward to seeing you with Coffee with Karl. Thank you. Hello, I'm your host, Karl Meneghella. I'd like to welcome you to this episode of Coffee with Karl. Today we're going to be looking at careers. Are they linear? Can they be different? Do they need to be redefined? Have they changed? What could they be? And with me today is Tony Meneghella. Tony, hello. I don't know whether to shake your hand or do this.
No, we don't fist bump.
This is my brother. And but that doesn't make it any less valid as far as the discussion, because he's a professional in his own right, a coach, a creator, and a consultant. And he's certainly had a very interesting career. I thought today we could use some of your examples and maybe help us redefine what careers can be. A lot of us have expectations, for example, like mum and dad say, I want you to go to university and become an accountant. What could that look like? So I thought we might start with your career.
Yeah, look, rather than talking too much about me, I think I want to pick up on, the key point about what is a career, and the fact that we all live with now, but it may be hard to have this discussion with your parents in particular about their expectations. Careers have changed and they are going to continue to change. The idea of having a single lifelong career is becoming less and less common, if not actually already rare or extinct. You could expect to have many careers in the course of your life. So thinking about what each one of those might be is, I think, where you're trying to go now, and that discussion about, are they linear? Could they be a series of different stepping stones? Or, indeed, we spoke about this before, accidental.
Mm. Well, in Japan, they were famous for many, many years of having a lifelong career. And a person would typically start as, let's use the accountant as an example. They graduate from an accountancy degree, join a company, and they'd be with the company until they retired. And that was the norm. And there was a great sense of security, a great sense of fit, I belong here. And you could make plans, and that was the other thing. You could make plans because you had that sense of security. So that's going as well. Not just the fact that we might have several diverse careers, but the whole idea of that security for a lot of us is gone.
Yeah, indeed, and we hear all the time about redundancies, about companies going in and out of business, and all sorts of things that will impose changes on you in your career that have nothing to do with your desires or the plans you might have had. The best way to try and ensure yourself or assure yourself of continuity is to really take charge of your own career and try to work out what's important to you, what you want to achieve. People can still look at longevity with an employer, longevity with an activity, but I think it's much more important to look at how you can continue to grow. If you continue to grow, expand what you do day to day in your engagement with work, I think you'll have greater longevity and really be able to give yourself some insurance of continuing employability.
Can we pull at that thread for a second about continuing to grow? And I think there's several components here, because that growth doesn't mean you have to go back to university and do another degree. It can mean that. It could mean going back and doing a graduate diploma or something else, which we have both done through our careers, gone back to university as mature students. But it could also be growing in other things. So maybe some skill sets, for example. There might be short courses, it might be just things by immersion, by experience. Could we talk about some of those that you've seen with people over the years?
Sure. You mentioned very, very importantly, I think, going back to university as an adult to me, significantly easier indeed than trying to just continue on from secondary school to university. I failed at that and took forever to look at an undergraduate qualification, went back to do postgraduate studies and then masters that had so much more resonance because they were helping me with what I was doing for work, how I was engaged, and for what I wanted to achieve later. But there was much greater alignment, and it was a choice. It was about what I want to study, continue to study, for my own benefit, my own growth in my career. So going back to study, formally or otherwise, definitely a key thing. Continuing to grow is about looking for new opportunities. And that's really, really important. So, the accountant, you may go from a junior accountant and then, become a bookkeeper and a senior bookkeeper. You could step into audit. You could look at financial advisory services. You may become a CFO. Lots of people think that a chief financial officer is, an accountant, a glorified accountant, when in fact the skills that they require are so much broader. They need an understanding of global economics. They need to understand balance of trade figures between the trading partners that provide resources to their company and people who consume products from their company. So much, much bigger than just being an accountant. And that's about growth. So having an aspiration to become a CFO, if you're studying accounting, think about adding other things into what you want to learn about, again, formally or otherwise.
Which could also be then going back to university and doing maybe an MBA to complement that, to have a shallower but broader understanding of different fields.
Yeah, MBAs, again, personal perspective. So I have a master's in enterprise, which is about business, the nature of business, how they work. I think MBAs are a fantastic place for people to go as a step back once you've been working for a few years, again, for that breadth. Having a view that's a little broader, not digging down. If you went to do a master's in a particular field, you're going to learn lots more about a smaller domain. An MBA is spectacular in the breadth. And it'll also give you insights into where you might find opportunities you hadn't thought of before.
Could we explore that for a second? Let's go to accounting, so quite formalised, quite structured. But you could be an accountant for a company, as Tony said, and work your way up to CFO or whatever. You could also take whatever you are studying into private enterprise. So Tony mentioned before a financial advisor. You could be a person who actually advises other people, whether it's their tax or whether it's their family planning or whether it's buying houses, so actually doing the financial planning with people. It could be doing the finance for, and this is going right out of left field, it could be doing finance for movies. It could be looking at finance for entertainment industry. So actually helping would-be stars promote themselves, marketing and then packaging the merchandise and the financing of that. I know that when Paul McCartney came to Perth, Paul Dainty had, and there's three Pauls, there was Paul Dainty, Paul Gadine and Paul McCartney. Paul Gadine, his background was an accountant. He took the tour of Paul McCartney from the Beatles in Australia. And that's what he started doing as a living. So what a great life. He was trained in accounting, so he could actually do all the bookkeeping, but he specialised in a little niche where he met these superstars all the time, managing their Australian part of their world tour. And I think that's there's something there where you may think that you're going to study this and become that. There's so many other things that you may want to become, or you might have the opportunity. And I think you said about identifying opportunity.
Yeah. And again, I'll go back to an MBA, great way to do that, to increase the breadth of your vision, increase your understanding about what other elements of business are out there that might be complementary to the skill sets that you have, might enable an easier stepping stone rather than a dramatic career change. Often, accountants can wind up, I think, to me, an exciting space is in venture capital, in the VC world, helping other people to create brand new ventures and making sure that they get the numbers right, sure, but get the intent right. So they, again, start to learn much more about economics, about supply and demand, about, community development, country development, right? So, definitely from your humble beginnings as a junior accountant, you can definitely find ways to go and, tread out in the world stage in so many different ways.
You just made me think about that when you said so many different ways. You could be an accountant and become a spy. Well, maybe not a spy, but maybe a forensic accountant for example, the intelligence service of your country, or for the financial service of your country. You know, for example, there is a financial crimes division, and they need people who are forensic accountants to actually try and find where the money came from, where the money is going. So that, you know, there really is no end of opportunities, but you've got to have an open mind. And I think there's other things, which means if you want to have these other opportunities, you have to have other skills. And part of those might be, you know, communication skills. They might be teamwork skills. They might be things like being able to communicate in another language, so having, you know, linguistic skills. But I know there's one that's really deep and resonates with you, and I didn't want to say it because I know it's something really, you know, that you can elaborate on. But what is a fundamental skill that I think every student may want to benefit from?
If you want a job in the real world, the one thing that I would suggest every single tertiary student should look into, should study, and indeed look at mastering, is project management. Project management is about the collection of resources to execute tasks to deliver an objective.
Sorry, could we break that back down again? And especially, we have some ESL students.
Sure. So you're doing an assignment. You could stress and think it's just a collection of stuff I've got to put together and eventually deliver a paper to my professor. You could be a little more scientific about that and take a project management approach. What is the outcome that I need to deliver for my professor?
Okay, so a PowerPoint presentation, for example.
PowerPoint presentation. Has he or she, have they set a format?
Let's assume they have.
Do you know the key success criteria for your presentation?
Well, hopefully the professor shared that, and if not, then that's a great question to ask.
Have you been able to unpack the key success criteria from their expectations that may be unstated?
Right, yep.
Are there other stakeholders? Part of project management, a key part of project management is stakeholder management. Finding out all those things that people don't say. I thought it was going to be in blue, right? I like it when there's lots of moving parts. Stakeholder management, stakeholder engagement. The other thing is about, do you really have a good handle on all of the resources that you're going to need to execute? And what's the sequence that you're going to do things in? Right? Part of project management that I think is, again, key, often understated, is an element called reverse planning. If I need to achieve this, what is the step before? What's the step before? What's the step before? We use reverse planning to do critical path analysis. Do I understand that set of chain reactions, chain steps? But it's also about being able to say, have I fully prepared this first resource to get the next one? Have I done myself a research guide before I go to the library? Right? Have I outlined a draft of my paper before I start typing?
Yes.
Right? Those are all things that are really basic project management skills. Do I understand what I need to achieve for the key success criteria and for those sets of stakeholder expectations? Do I understand the resources I need? Do I understand the tasks and the sequence to build up to that outcome?
Okay, so let's go back to that PowerPoint presentation. Let's imagine that you're a student, or I'm a student. I have 3 other students in my group. My first thing is to look at the stakeholders then and make sure that we understand our roles, our responsibilities, so it's shared. And then we look at what is the professor looking for. And that's probably been told to us what the success criteria are. And then before we start writing, you're saying we actually spend some time planning.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And you have to build into this. Again, what is the outcome? So we might think it's a PowerPoint presentation. Fabulous. What if the outcome is actually, I need 12 copies of that for the review board on my desk by 9 a.m. Monday morning? What if the printer's broken when you go in? You think, I'm going to go in early on Monday morning, I'm going to print those 12 copies, and you know what? The printer's broken.
Yes.
So what that means in your scheduling part of project management, I really need this done well before Monday morning so that I can make sure all the copies, the printer didn't run out of toner as it was going through 12 copies,
yes,
that nothing's been misprinted, that the collation, there's not inserted randomly blank pages. If you've done that by Sunday night even, Monday morning you go in and you are prepared to deliver the outcome that's required.
And because you're prepared, the presentation becomes better. It becomes more fluid, it becomes more seamless.
And less painful.
Yes, yeah. That reminds me of the old adage of the 6 or 7 Ps, the prior preparation and planning prevents pretty poor performance.
Yeah.
And,
But
there is a key there, and you might think, but it sounds like too much. It is if you try and unpack it all at once, but if you think about it as a project, so having some friends over for dinner is a project.
Yeah.
Right? Planning, we're going to have this and this and this dish or whatever. We're going to, play Monopoly after or whatever it's going to do. That's you're planning the event. And it can be as small as that or as big as a merger or a takeover. But the fundamental steps and knowledge is the same.
Yeah. Look, something I used to use when I was teaching project management was actually to talk to people and say, imagine at the end of this year, you and your friends, you're going to go to Europe to go skiing.
Okay.
Right? Okay.
I'm going.
So that's the objective. And you'll go, yeah, great, and we're planning it. What does that mean, planning it? First thing, is there a budget? Do you know how much it's going to cost you to go skiing? Are you going to have to buy ski wear? Are you going to hire it? Right? And you say, okay, we're going to hire it when we get to Europe. Do you know where from? Do you know who the supplier of that resource is going to be? Can you get it? In America, often if you go skiing, the hotel that you stay at, if you're in Salt Lake City, for example, the hotel will organise it. You tell them when you check in, I'm going skiing, they'll have a bus, it'll take you to the hire shop, you'll get your stuff, off you'll go. Unless you're a big guy. You might need to go to a specialist hire shop, and you know what, there might have been a big guy in there, the day before you, and they're out of the equipment that you need. So that's one element. Have you saved enough money for the trip? Have you saved enough money for the hire? Have you saved enough money to go for your ski passes? So, today in July, if you're thinking about going skiing in December, have you worked out that every single week I'm going to need to have $100 in the bank to be able to fund this trip at the end of the year with my friends? One of your friends has hurt themselves. They need surgery. It's not urgent. They could do the surgery today. They could do it before you go skiing. There's a danger if you go skiing that'll be too late. The recovery time for the surgery is a month.
Yep. That has to be done then by October, so there's the time to recover before December skiing.
Absolutely. So that becomes critical path. Right? So all of these simple elements, just planning your simple skiing trip with your friends takes a lot of stuff that we can do unconsciously. But one of the beauties of actually going through the process of managing that project is getting everyone on the same page. Everyone understands their roles, their responsibilities. You can have a series of incremental steps that will build up to this big outcome that become less painless. We're prepared for those, and you can be actually prepared for risk or unseen objectives that come in at the last moment. I've got a new assignment. Oh my goodness, I've got to finish that. How can I work that in around the other stuff I'm doing?
You've mentioned critical path now several times, and I'd like to actually, if we could, just explain that a little bit deeper. What does it mean when you say critical path?
So in project management and in planning a dinner party for your friends on the weekend, critical path is the series of necessary steps that follow what we call head to tail. So it's I need to go and buy rice before I can cook rice. I need to have bought the rice, to cook the rice, to let it cool before I can make fried rice.
Okay. So if you miss out on one step, there's no fried rice.
Absolutely, there's no fried rice.
And we all want to have fried rice.
I want to borrow 4 chairs from my neighbour's place because I've only got 4 and I've got 8 people coming for dinner. If you tell your neighbour that on the morning of the dinner, he might also need his 4 chairs. If you tell him the week in advance, less stress.
So, okay, dinner party. So critical path so far is I need to tell my neighbour now that next weekend, can I borrow 4 chairs, please?
Yep.
I need to go shopping for the rice, so I've got that.
Yep.
All right, I've already got the rice cookers, that's done. And if I've done those 2 things, I can now have my fried rice and have the 8 chairs.
Do you have all the ingredients for your fried
rice? Exactly.
rice?
I'm seeing how it becomes quite critical.
Yeah, absolutely. So one step follows another. Now, you might know in your pantry that you've got the other bits and pieces you want to put in the fried rice, you've got it in your fridge, what have you. So those items aren't on the critical path.
Yes.
They will happen in the natural course of actually making the fried rice. That's fine. Until you unpack making fried rice. There'll be, a recipe to follow. Yes. Or you'll have your mum's instructions to follow. She'll have taught you how to make fried rice and you will know the series of events that you need. Right? Scramble an egg, put it aside. Fry up the pork, put it aside. Then everything comes together, fried rice. A miracle happens. And that's what a lot of people think when, companies deliver new big products or anything else. A miracle has occurred.
Right.
Right? It's all good project management.
I like it. I like it. And I can see now how it can relate to students in very simple things, but it's those habits. And I think that's a really important part. And I think if you do it repetitively and consciously, it becomes a habit and a chance for us to actually be more comfortable with things and more prepared.
Absolutely. And this is one of the other things we've spoken about, language, shared language. There's a global project management community there. Almost every country has institutes of project management and they teach project management. People get certified and there is codified language, there's codified practice. So I'm a certified Prince 2 practitioner, I have a license. And that means that other people who understand what Prince 2 practice is all about will know the series of steps that I'm going to go through in executing a project. Right? We can share what we're talking about, critical path, what we're talking about, float, to find critical path.
So they understand.
They know all
language.
of those terms. They know that language. Right? But the thing is, people think about project management in terms of, oh, that's if I'm building a skyrise, or even maybe just building a house. Anyone with a deliverable, a student preparing a paper for a professor, a doctor preparing for surgery. Complex surgeries require, minute management. All of the players need to know their role, their responsibilities, what's going to happen in the case of an emergency. All of that is pre-planned so that if they're surprised, it's not actually a surprise about how to deal with that. Right? The event, surprise, the actions that come after that, pre-planned, makes life easier. So back to project management, if there's one key thing you could add to your studies for whatever career, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a civil engineer, no matter what you're going to do in your profession, you will benefit by studying some project management.
And when Tony says study, it doesn't have to be go and do another course. It could be, but there are also online courses, there are free courses, there's books. You can download a lot of materials off the internet, for example. There are YouTube videos for people who actually do tutorials online. This can also add to your CV, for example. So you might graduate with your Bachelor of Accounting. On your CV, you might also be able to say, I've also done this course. There's a thing called edX, 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 and that's free university courses from all over the world where you don't get a certificate, but you actually do the work. And if you want to get the certificate, you pay a fee, and it's about $90. You can actually get the certificate of that course, not the degree, a course. So students who do those kind of things through edX can add that to their CV, which makes you more competitive when you're in the job market, because your buddies and your friends now are going to be your competitors in the future. When you want to go for a job, they're also applying for the job. So you want to differentiate yourself and show that you are different, that you are worth employing.
It's an investment in time. Again, something like edX, fabulous. I was doing some studies through Columbia University, same thing online. Sometimes you think about, do I need to be certified? Do I not need to be certified? This is about how you want to market yourself. So a key differentiator when you're starting, yes, you're going to be competing with everyone else who has an accounting degree. If you also have paid for it and you are certified in project management, it'll definitely be a step up the ladder of the applicants, right? But it's a skill worth having. That, structured or otherwise, certified or otherwise, it's a skill worth having in everything you're trying to pursue.
So we've got a couple of takeaways here. One is, if you have the chance to and the willingness, have a look at project management, and even just dip your toe in, just have a look at it to see what it's all about. But it really is quite simple as a philosophy. The second one you just said about marketing yourself, you need to look at yourself as a brand, like Nike or Coca-Cola or Ford or Ferrari, but you need to start to develop yourself as a brand, a person who is seen as certain attributes and skills. Those could be that you are reliable, or you are responsible, or you're a lifelong learner. You're prepared to invest in your career. You're prepared to invest in identifying opportunities. I think they're really important things for students.
Yeah, look, that's a great message in there. And I spoke earlier about, if you really want to take control of your career, right, you're not relying on the company to keep you forever. You're not relying on, turning up to work at the same place, doing the same thing for 50 years. You've got to manage your career, and that means managing your brand, managing who you are and what you deliver, what you're known for.
Mr. Nike, Mr. Tony, thank you very much.
Thanks, brother.
And thank you very much for joining us in this episode of Coffee with Karl. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me with Coffee with Karl. I hope you had a chance to gain some new knowledge and insights, and perhaps together we can wake up our thinking. Thank you.